In Ecuador, two suspects allegedly involved in the killing of prosecutor Cesar Suarez were arrested on Thursday, but two more are on the run. In Palestine, Israeli occupation forces destroyed several buildings with explosives, including the Al-Israa University. In France, heavy snowfalls have hit the north of the country, causing dozens of kilometers of traffic jams on several roads in the area. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Ecuador, a new police and military intervention is being carried out today in the regional prison of the city of Guayaquil, where hundreds of agents have entered the prison. According to official information, the new operation is aimed at seizing prohibited objects inside the penitentiary. However, local media speculate that the uniformed officers are trying to gather information related to the latest violent events in that coastal city, including the murder of prosecutor Cesar Suarez. The magistrate was handling, among other cases, charges of terrorism against 11 criminals who attacked last week the TC television channel and was shot this Wednesday in the town of Los Ceibos in that city of the province of Guayas. In this context, it was informed that during this week the army and police will continue to be deployed throughout the national territory. In Ecuador, two suspects allegedly involved in the killing of prosecutor Cesar Suarez, investigating the past week's attack on a TV station, were arrested on Thursday, but two more are on the run. Under the newly imposed state of emergency, suspects are being investigated under terrorism charges, which is how the government has now branded the organized crime criminal groups. Cesar Suarez, who was part of the transnational organized crime investigation unit and was investigating major drug trafficking and corruption cases, was gunned down Wednesday afternoon in the port city of Guayaquil. The police commander general, Cesar Zapata, said 1,975 people have been detained as part of the numerous operations during the emergency. Of this, 158 are accused of alleged terrorist acts. In the United Kingdom, the Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, denounced before the International Maritime Organization that the unilateral coercive measures and the blockade of Venezuelan vessels affect international trade. The Venezuelan Executive Vice President met in London with the Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization, Arsenio Dominguez Velasco, where she stated that 39 vessels of the state-owned Petróleos de Venezuela and 30 of international trade are illegitimately sanctioned. Rodriguez pointed out that this is the fourth country in the world in terms of the number of sanctioned vessels.
And particularly as Venezuela, I express our concern that the entire fleet of ships and vessels that PDVSA has are illegitimately sanctioned. They are blockaded. Not only 39 PDVSA vessels, but also 30 international trade vessels that have been sanctioned. As you know, within this terrible policy of economic aggression against Venezuela, we are the fourth country with the highest number of blockade ships in the world. It is really an embarrassing situation, and that's why we insist. President Nicolás Maduro, with great courage, with great firmness, calling for the cessation of this illegal and illegitimate blockade that has become a true economic genocide against the Venezuelan.
Executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez explains the sanctions recognized by the United Nations system and expresses her concern about the global climate emergency.
The international organizations are really helpless in the face of a blockade which violates international law, because the only sanctions recognized by the United Nations systems are the sanctions issued by the Security Council. From a country unilaterally, extraterritorially, obviously does not exist within the framework of the law and the regulations, but we talk. We express our concern about this situation. Similarly, a very important issue that has to do with the global climate emergency, as Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called it. It is not longer an issue of climate crisis. We are in a real climate emergency.
Venezuela's executive vice president also analyzes the essential United Nations issues addressed at the meeting, such as the paralysis of transportation and trade in the Panama Canal and the impact on the economy.
The whole issue of greenhouse gas emissions from international shipping is a very essential issue that this organization is addressing. We are talking about something that affects us in particular, that has to do with the transport and trade that goes through the Panama Canal. You know that impacted by the effect of the El Niño, transportation through the Panama Canal has been reduced practically by 30%.
Also, the Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, reiterated that the blockade against the economy and oil production has caused losses of more than $640 billion US.
Well, you know that the president, in his annual message to the nation, gave some really scary numbers. In terms of oil production from 2015 to 2022, we lost almost 4 billion barrels, the equivalent of $323 billion. Now, as each currency that enters the economy also impacts the currency coming from the oil industry, it impacts the gross domestic production of Venezuela by $642 billion. We are not incorporating the year 2023. So, well, the denunciation, the affectation to Venezuela has been an economic genocide against the people. It has caused social wounds. It has caused an impact on health, on education, and always from there, the plans of defense of the Venezuelan people.
Vice President Delcy Rodriguez assured that the international community has called for an end to the blockade against Venezuela, a fact that also impacts in the regional economy.
But the blockade has also had an impact on the international economy. For example, the Petrocaribe program. Let's look at the situation that Haiti is going through as a result of the suspension of the important benefits, the positive impact that the Petrocaribe program had for the Caribbean countries. At the international level, we said last year at the European Union summit, countries of the European Union that had a share in Venezuela's oil production were also impacted. Well, the United States in North America, so the international call voices have been praised at the international level. The President of Mexico, the President of Colombia, the President of Brazil. The call has been to cease the blockade against Venezuela. It must stop. It is a right of the Venezuelan people. It is a right of Venezuela as a sovereign nation, but also the international community has added its voice in favor of the end of the blockade against the country.
The Venezuelan Vice President also said that in her conversation with the authorities of the International Maritime Organization, she addressed the issue of environmental care in the area in front of Guyana in the Essequibo, taking into account that it is a disputed area.
Yes, I address it obviously because of the ships that are taking crude oil out of Venezuela, commercializing it in an area that is spanning the delimited of environmental impact as well. The environmental issue is a very sensitive issue for the International Maritime Organization that has concrete plans to address it. Well, they also participate recently, as I talked to the Secretary General, in the last climate change summit held in the United Arab Emirates. It is a very concrete issue. It is an issue that has to do with the reduction of greenhouse gases and all the rethinking that would have to be thought about, right? How geopolitics is also intervening with the international maritime transport, the rethinking of routes that can have a real impact on the climate emergency.
And Panama Canal Administration estimates economic losses due to drought-related water low levels at around $700 million. Annual losses reportedly average between $500 and $700 million, following the drop of maritime traffic, which has been reduced by 20% compared to 2023. The representative of the canal estimates losses in toll collection close to $100 million during the first quarter of the fiscal year alone. According to records, the Panama Canal's water feeding reservoirs, especially the Gatun Lake, are at the lowest level in history, which has made it necessary to regulate the water traffic. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Palestine, Israeli occupation forces destroyed several buildings with explosives, including the National Museum and Al-Israa University in the southern Gaza Strip. The university authorities denounced that the Israeli army attacked the main building of the educational institution, where the undergraduate and postgraduate areas were located. The Israeli troops also destroyed the National Museum, where they looted a collection of more than 3,000 archaeological objects of high value. The Gaza Government Communication Office reported that Tel Aviv regime has destroyed around 95 schools and damaged 295 others, with the aim of eliminating any culture and ideology from the Palestinian population. Projections by the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, indicate that the high levels of malnutrition could affect 10,000 children in the Gaza Strip in the next few weeks. In a statement, the agency said that in the absence of food and water, cases of wasting, the most lethal form of malnutrition, could increase by almost 30% compared to the levels prior to October 7th. They highlighted that Gaza is home to some 335,000 particularly vulnerable children under the age of 5 who face serious obstacles to accessing less than 2 liters of water a day as a result of the blockade perpetrated by Israel. According to the latest report of the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, food insecurity is extremely severe in Gaza, affecting 2.2 million inhabitants. Israel Minister of National Security suggested the Israeli military will occupy Gaza after the current war ended and supported the idea of an immigration plan for Palestinians to leave the territory. In an interview with Israel's Channel 13 on Wednesday, Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir said the Israeli Defense Forces would not leave the city centers in Gaza once the fighting had stopped. Ben-Gvir continued to say it would be practical to impose a plan which would see Palestinians leave the enclave through voluntary encouragement. Last week, member groups of the International Coalition to Stop Genocide in Palestine organized activities around the world to highlight and support the South African legal team as they presented their evidence of the State of Israel's acts of genocide against Palestinians to the International Court of Justice on January 11th. With nearly 2,000 signatory organizations from 100 countries on the initial letter calling for mobilization in defense of South Africa's strong case for genocide. Member organizations are working to press their governments to submit declarations of the intervention to the ICJ in support of emergency provisional measures on Israel to stop the genocide. At present, 57 nations publicly supported South Africa's case, among them Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Only 3 nations have publicly denied that Israel is committing genocide: the United States, United Kingdom, and Germany, despite the fact that the world is watching events happening in real time on social media and on outlets that have reporters on the ground. The State of Israel has tried to hide their crimes by targeting and murdering over 100 members of the media in Gaza. In this context, at the request of major Palestinian organizations and coalitions, the ICSGP has issued a call for 3 days of actions, starting with an International Day of Action opposing the war against Yemen on Friday. The following week, as we await for the decision by the ICJ, there will be a day of action focused on supporting South Africa's case and taking action to stop the genocide. And on January 31st, actions are being planned to protest in Germany for its role in enabling the State of Israel to commit acts of genocide with impunity. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In France, heavy snowfalls have hit the north of the country, causing dozens of kilometers of traffic jams on several roads in the area. Meteorological services declared an orange alert in 21 departments for rain and snow, while snowfall is expected to advance to other localities of the territory. The authorities have imposed traffic restrictions and are advising citizens in Paris to return home earlier. While in the Normandy and Hauts-de-France regions, school transport has been suspended and the circulation of trucks has been banned due to the snowfall forecasts. On Wednesday, lawmakers in the United Kingdom passed a bill to deport immigrants to Rwanda. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's new bill was approved with 320 votes in favor and 276 against after the Supreme Court rejected the original initiative in November. A total of 60 Conservative members of the Parliament supported amendments to the new bill, one of which will allow it to circumvent orders from the European Court of Human Rights. Under the government's initiative, immigrants who enter British soil illegally could be deported to Rwanda. Human rights groups have criticized the plan as inhuman and unworkable. It should be noted, after being challenged in British courts, the UK Supreme Court ruled in November that the policy was illegal because Rwanda isn't a safe country for refugees. And also, the German parliament approved on Thursday a legislation intended to ease deportations of unsuccessful asylum seekers as Chancellor Olaf Scholz seeks to defuse immigration as a political problem. The legislation foresees increasing the maximum length of pre-deportation custody from 10 days to 28 and specifically facilitating the deportation of people who are members of a criminal organization. It also authorizes residential searches for documentation that enables officials to firmly establish a person's identity, as well as remove the authorities' obligation to give advance notice of deportations in some cases. Germany's shelters for migrants and refugees have been filling up in recent months. A significant number of asylum seekers add to more than 1 million Ukrainians who have arrived since the start of Russia's war in their homeland. Thousands of people rallied across Slovakia on Thursday as protests intensified against a plan by the new government of Prime Minister Robert Fico to amend the country's penal code. The protest occurred a day after the European Parliament questioned Slovakia's ability to fight corruption and protect the European Union budget if the changes are adopted. The plan approved by Fico's coalition government includes abolishing the Special Prosecutor's Office, which handles serious crimes such as graft, organized crime, and extremism. Those cases would be taken over by prosecutors in regional offices, which haven't dealt with such crimes for 20 years. The planned changes also include a reduction in punishment for corruption and some other crimes, including the possibility of suspended sentences and a significant shortening of statute of limitations. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram,